Did you know that restoring keystone species like beavers, buffaloes, and wolves naturally revives our ecological system and creates climate resilience? Well, I was shocked too when I found that out recently through watching a lot of educational videos on that topic. I am the Divine Feminine reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, Kerry Blaser. And I'm here to share today how together we can understand ourselves and accept how we got here so we can decide how to move forward in unity. And let's start by understanding what was the driving force behind killing the beavers, the buffaloes, and the wolves in the 1900s. And that boils down to one ideology called manifest destiny. Americans believed from multiple sources, religion, economics, politics, that this land is ours and we're going to run it our way. And if anyone argues with us, well, you're going to get killed. Well, the buffalo argued with the Native Americans, and the beavers argued, and the wolves argued, so they had to go. Let's look into that ideology prior to looking at 3 videos, with the first one being about how restoring wolves to Yellowstone in the 1990s created $94 billion in savings, mostly around climate change. We'll get into that. The video is awesome. And then we'll get into how beavers help stop flooding, resist drought, and stop wildfires, and how the buffalo restore the prairie lands. Okay, so let's start with manifest destiny and see what were the beliefs, where do they come from. So, let's understand where we started, and then we'll move forward from there. So manifest destiny was a 19th century American belief that the United States was destined by God, history, and civilization to expand westward across North America. Its origins come from a mix of religion, politics, economics, and earlier colonial ideas. So let's look at the European, the Western worldview, and then we'll look at the Native Americans and how they viewed it, okay? So first, the Puritan religious worldview is that Puritans believed they were the chosen people. They were a chosen people. Well, the Jews have that belief too. Do you think Islam has that belief today as well? Think about that. America was a new Israel. I mean, it's interesting they looked at it that way because Columbus left Spain in 1492. And now most people don't know that the Jews were also exiled from Spain in 1492. And I have intimate knowledge of that because my married name from my Israeli ex-husband, and I have 3 children with him, Buzaglo, came from that 1492 event in Spain. It means exiled and humiliated. So when I tell you that Columbus was Jewish, had Jewish ancestry, and then he arrived in, the kind of south of the Americas, the Caribbean, it won't surprise you that Cherokee Native Americans who are from that area also have Jewish DNA, okay? Chosen people, new America. It's interesting, right? And then my last name is Aglo. So they saw their society as a model God wanted spread. God's telling us to do it, okay? So let's go down to European colonial ideology, Christian superiority, because Christians taught that the cross is the only ladder to heaven. You want to go to heaven, you got to come through our institution. Native Americans didn't agree. Okay, civilizing non-Europeans, which the wolf video will get into that. Doctrine of discovery, Christian nations could claim non-Christian lands. God said. If God said, then God said. American nationalism after independence, economic pressure and land hunger. I mean, you can Google it. And so it was very useful politically. And so let's look at the Native Americans and see how they understood it. So land, sacred relationship versus commodity. The U.S. view was land as a commodity, something you buy, sell, and exploit for your own purposes. The Native view is that The land and the animals are living relatives. There's a sacred trust, a source of identity. I mean, the Native Americans worked with the buffalo. They would, burn the prairies to revive the ecological systems to support the buffalo. And in gratitude for the Native Americans doing that, then okay, they killed some of the buffalo, not that many, for their hides and their meat and their horns. And they had like 500 uses for a buffalo. So they really put it to use, but this is how our souls planned this, okay? So let's get back to how the Native Americans, destiny versus choice, U.S. narrative, expansion was inevitable, willed by God or history. Native understanding, broken treaties, military campaigns, forced removals, resource grabs, okay? Different perspectives, but really when we boil it down to spirituality, we're all souls having a human experience, and all of our souls decided to make progress in this way. Okay, and I'm here as a divine feminine to tell you that the second coming is the same thing as the Hopi Native Americans' great purification. It's time for us all to accept that we're souls having a human experience, a buffalo experience, a beaver experience, and we're all in it together, okay? So if you want to know more, please research it. But I think it's important that we get to this wolf video, because the wolf video in Yellowstone, because it really does a great summary of what it did when you brought the wolves back and they corralled the elk, and how corralling the elk brought back the vegetation along the rivers, and then that restored the beavers, and restoring the vegetation along the rivers helped the bears. And then the wolves killed like half of the coyotes who were overkilling all the rodents, and then drove the birds out. So you'll see how it's a complex web. But when we accept that we're in relation with and not dominance over, that's our best path forward. And this doesn't mean destroy Western society. It means accept where we're at now. How can we work forward to, I enjoy indoor plumbing, okay? How can we move forward together to restore our ecology, which create climate resilience, and that naturally stores carbon in the earth and in the trees? And we're going to learn how restoring wolves to Yellowstone saved $94 billion. Yeah, let's learn how that works.
What if I told you that 14 wolves changed the course of an entire ecosystem? In 1995, the US government did something that seemed pretty simple. They took 14 Canadian wolves and released them into Yellowstone National Park. What followed wasn't just the restoration of a species, it was the transformation of an entire ecosystem, the revival of a dying landscape, and an economic miracle that would eventually save America $94 billion. But to understand how 14 wolves managed to do all this, we need to go back to when everything started going wrong. Here's an unobtrusive reminder to hit that like button if you're ready for an incredible story about how nature can heal itself in the most unexpected ways. Let's start in the early 1900s. Back then, wolves were seen as nothing but pests, dangerous predators that needed to be eliminated. The US government actually had official wolf killers, people whose job was literally to just shoot, trap, or poison every wolf they could find. And they were really good at their jobs. By 1926, the last wolf pack in Yellowstone had been killed. People celebrated this as a victory. They had no idea what they'd just done. But here's where it gets really interesting. First, everything seemed fine. Sure, there were no wolves, but who needs wolves, right? Wrong. Over the next few decades, things started going terribly wrong, but so slowly that at first nobody noticed. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Without wolves, the elk population exploded, and I mean exploded. By the 1990s, there were about 19,000 elk in Yellowstone's northern range alone. These elk basically turned into living lawnmowers, eating every young tree and bush they could find. Aspen trees, willows, cottonwoods, nothing stood a chance. Saplings would sprout in the spring, and by winter, they'd all be gone. But wait, I hear you asking, couldn't they just hunt the elk to control the population? Well, they tried. But here's something fascinating. Wolves don't just kill elk, they change how elk behave.
Yes. So The animals are intuitive. They all understand that they're in relation with each other. So it's the wolf's job intuitively to maintain boundaries with the elk, and it just comes out of them naturally. So when we learn to listen to ourselves, our intuition, we're souls having a human experience, our souls know everything. The animals don't fight themselves, but humans do. Okay, I think we can learn a lot from the animals.
This is something scientists call the ecology of fear, and it's way more important than anyone realized. When there are no wolves around, elk can just stand in one place, munching away until they've eaten everything. It's like teenagers raiding a refrigerator when their parents are away for the weekend. But
wolves create healthy boundaries with the other animals. That is the point. Healthy boundaries that's their job. They're the alpha. They create healthy boundaries, just like stopping immigration, illegal immigration, uncontrolled over the border. Stopping that is a healthy boundary, okay?
with wolves present, elk have to keep moving, stay vigilant, avoid certain areas. They can't just hang out by rivers and streams all day, eating all the young trees.
I mean, when the wolves aren't there to draw a healthy boundary, the illegal immigrants, the elk, take up all the resources. And then when the trees are all dead, they're going to see there's tons of runoff into the streams, and then the beavers can't, sustain 80% of wildlife. Beavers sustain 80% of wildlife. But the wolves controlling the elk, not eating all the trees, creates an environment where the beavers can come back. They're all in relation with each other.
By the early 1990s, Yellowstone was in serious trouble. The park's ecosystem was collapsing, but most visitors had no idea. They'd see the beautiful mountains, the geysers, the elk everywhere, and think everything was perfect. But scientists were watching a different story unfold. The decision to bring back wolves wasn't an easy one. Ranchers fought against it, worried about their livestock. Hunters weren't happy either. They thought wolves would decimate the elk population they relied on. Some locals even spread rumors that the government was planning to release super wolves, specially bred killing machines that would terrorize the entire region. But here's something most people don't know. The wolves chosen for reintroduction were carefully selected. They picked wolves from Canada because these wolves were used to hunting the same prey they'd find in Yellowstone. They choose wolves from different packs to ensure genetic diversity. And get this, they even looked for wolves that had never had conflicts with humans or livestock. The actual reintroduction was like something out of a movie. In January 1995, 14 wolves were brought in, each one carefully sedated and transported in separate crates. The wolves were kept in acclimation pens for several weeks, allowing them to get used to their new home while still being protected. When they were finally released, nobody knew if they'd stay in the park or just run away. Not only did they stay, but they thrived. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Each wolf pack developed its own personality, its own hunting style, even its own family drama that researchers could follow like some wild animal soap opera. Take the Druid Peak Pack, for example. They became the most famous wolf pack in Yellowstone's history. Led by a wolf known as 21M, nicknamed the Gentleman, this pack grew to 37 members, the largest ever recorded in the park. Wolf 21 became legendary not just for his size and strength, but for his unusual behavior. He never killed defeated rivals, adopted orphaned pups, and stayed with the same mate for life. When his mate died, he stopped eating and died shortly after. Even scientists who try to avoid anthropomorphizing animals admitted this was something special. But the wolves didn't just create interesting stories. They started changing everything around them. And I mean everything. Scientists call it a trophic cascade. But really, it was more like ecological dominoes, falling in ways nobody had predicted. First, the elk population started dropping, but not just because wolves were hunting them. The elk actually started behaving differently. They avoided valleys and gorges where they could be easily trapped. They spent less time by rivers where wolves could ambush them. This meant that in these areas, young trees could finally grow without being eaten. Within just a few years, new aspen, willow, and cottonwood trees were sprouting up along rivers. But this wasn't just about trees growing. It was the start of something much bigger. Those trees stabilized riverbanks, preventing erosion. This actually changed the rivers themselves. They became less wandering, more stable, and clearer. The changes in Yellowstone's rivers were just the beginning. With more trees along the riverbanks, beavers started coming back. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. In 1995, there was only one beaver colony in the park. By 2012, there were 9. Today, there are so many that scientists have trouble keeping count.
My mouth is on the floor. We are in relation with each other. When we allow our animals to live their natural ways, they teach us how to engage with nature in a way that creates long-term success. Manifest destiny, kill all the animals, bring in European cattle. Well, we're going to find out in the buffalo video why that didn't work and why our ecology was destroyed because of it. The way the buffalo interact with the land brings ecological revival. The way a foreign invader like the cattle interacts with the land destroys it. And because they've developed with the land over, how many thousands and thousands of years. So let's keep going, but this whole connection between the wolves and the beaver maintains 80%, maintains a landscape for 80% of animals.
And beavers, it turns out, are nature's engineers. Every beaver dam created new wetland habitat. These wetlands attracted more species: frogs, fish, birds, insects, and even otters. The dams also help prevent erosion and filter water, making the rivers cleaner. They even help during droughts by holding water in the landscape longer. But here's something nobody expected. The wolves started affecting the bears. How? Well, when wolves make a kill, they don't eat everything. They leave behind what scientists call wolf kills, basically leftover elk carcasses. These leftovers became a crucial food source for all sorts of animals, including grizzly bears. And it gets even more interesting. Remember those berries I mentioned the elk were eating? With fewer elk around, berry bushes started growing back. More berries meant more food for bears, especially in late summer when they're preparing for hibernation. Scientists found that Yellowstone's grizzly bears now get a significant portion of their diet from berries that wouldn't exist without wolves. And here's something that will really blow your mind. In 2017, scientists discovered that wolves might even be affecting Yellowstone's supervolcano. Yeah, you heard that right. Before wolves returned, the overgrazing elk were compacting the soil so much that it affected how underground heat dispersed. When wolves changed elk behavior and vegetation started growing back, it actually helped the soil become less compacted. This allowed underground heat to disperse more evenly. Now, this doesn't mean wolves are preventing a volcanic eruption, but it shows just how deep their influence goes. Literally. Scientists studying the park's geothermal features never expected that the return of a predator could affect something as fundamental as how heat moves through the ground. It's just another example of how everything in nature is connected in ways we're still discovering. Even the coyotes were affected, though not in a way they probably appreciated. Before wolves returned, coyotes were the top dog in Yellowstone. They had no competition. But wolves don't like coyotes at all. The wolf pack started killing coyotes and driving them out of certain areas. The coyote population dropped by 50%. This might sound bad, but it had some surprising benefits. With fewer coyotes around, populations of small mammals started increasing. More mice and voles meant more food for hawks, owls, foxes, and weasels. The whole food web became more complex and more stable. Now, let's talk about that $94 billion, because this is where the story gets really interesting from an economic perspective. When scientists started calculating the economic benefits of all these changes, they had to consider things nobody had thought about before. First, there's tourism. Wolf watching alone brings in about $35 million per year to the communities around Yellowstone. People come from all over the world just to see these wolves. Some dedicated wolf watchers spend thousands of dollars on special equipment just to observe them from a distance. But that's just the beginning. The recovering forests capture and store carbon dioxide, a service that's worth billions in terms of climate change mitigation. The healthier rivers and streams reduce water treatment costs for surrounding communities. The restored wetlands help prevent flooding and provide natural water storage. And here's something really unexpected. The wolves are even saving money on road maintenance. How? Well, with fewer elk hanging around on riverbanks, there's less erosion. Less erosion means more stable ground, which means roads and bridges last longer and need fewer repairs.
So I'm going to stop the video there because you're seeing the kind of how expansive the impacts are. When we accept that we need to be in balance with nature and the animals, and of course we need to maintain our cities, sure, but we have to come in balance with them. Just executing them is not the way. And England found that out because we learned to kill the beavers in America from England. I mean, they exterminated all beavers in the 1600s in England. And then something happened. Someone released a couple beavers and they realized how much it helped reduce their flooding and their drought. So now I have a video from a place in England when they reintroduced beavers, how the beaver dams created a lot of groundwater. So when all the rain came, the didn't just flood the city, it just came into these expansive waterways that the beavers had created. And then when it got dry, all that water stored in the groundwater and all those waterways, there's no drought. So let's take a look at that next and see what England is doing to restore beavers and the positive impacts on like so many levels. And then we'll get to the buffalo.
Part of that was about their ecology and how they fit into landscapes like this again, but it was also the social context of, are people willing to see this species return?
Rasheen and her team monitored reintroductions closely. They documented all the good things beavers do, but also those that caused concern and conflict. Altered river courses, felled trees, flooded fields. They found such risks could be managed, and that most people welcomed their new neighbors. Conservationists in Devon were keen to adapt the Scottish team's methods and asked Rasheen to help lead a similar trial here. But wouldn't an approach that worked in rural Scotland have similar success in a more densely populated landscape?
We hatched upon a plan to run an experiment to see what would happen when these beavers came in and started building dams. Little did we know what profound change we would observe.
And if I just reverse out and then I'll go to that end.
Can you give us a shove, Rasheen?
Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, that's great. Go for it.
All good.
Oh, that is great. If you can hold here, we can get some good measurements. Before the beavers built this dam, there was no pond at all on this whole floodplain, but it's completely transformed now.
Rich has called in hydrologist Alan Puttick to help study how beavers physically alter Britain's rivers.
320 there.
They start by measuring the amount of water the pond can hold.
It's probably the deepest so far. 670.
And how much more it can hold during storms to reduce flooding downstream.
About 700 millimeters deep. Excellent. If we get these depths across the whole pond, we can work out what the volume of water is that's being stored. And then when the floods come, how much capacity there is to reduce that flooding downstream.
Over 5 million people in the UK live and work in areas at risk of flooding, costing around $1.5 billion in damage a year. A changing climate only makes matters worse by generating more severe storms with torrential rain. The village of East Budleigh, situated just west of the River Otter, had suffered from flooding for years. But now, there's a new beaver dam upstream.
So if we set up here,
Right.
so I've been doing these surveys every year for the last 4 years or so. It's allowed us to look at the structure of the site and the water storage and how that's changed over time. So it's starting to take off now.
Satellite and drone images reveal an incredible transformation. The beavers have turned unused farmland into wetland.
Pond's massive.
So it was really restricted to just under where the original channel was. But now it's kind of spread out, what do you reckon, 50, 60 meters?
This new wetland changes the way water flows downstream during storms.
There we go, we can already see.
Without the beaver dam, storms overfill the river and cause flooding. Lucky for this village, the dam slows and redirects water through braided streams and wetlands that hold more water than a straight and unimpeded channel. Since the beavers built their dam about 4 years ago, East Budleigh hasn't experienced a single flood.
Storm flows have been reduced by up to 50%.
And during the hottest months of the year, while adjacent land has dried up and turned yellow, the beaver-built wetlands remain lush and green.
So I'll stop the video there and it will be linked below. But this is happening all over England. They're restoring beavers and they're seeing how flooding gets stopped, drought gets stopped. And when you have water in the land, all that groundwater, beavers also stop wildfires. That's happening in America, across America. So the last video I have to share is of the buffalo. It's my son's buffalo when he went to the Channel Islands Marine Institute and for his 5th grade trip. He's 27 now, but he got his buffalo. So we love buffalo in this family. My grandpa hunted buffalo as a fly fisherman, and so I've always been connected to the buffalo. But the buffalo do more work to help revive the environment and help store carbon in the land, in the trees, as opposed to over-releasing it into the atmosphere. When we change our relationship with the environment and the animals, then we change our relationship with the environment, and that's a main contributor to how it got brought out of balance. So let's learn from the buffalo now. Oh.
Getting back to our history and bringing our culture and our food back to our people. We expect to grow the herd very strategically, but it has been very important that we look at the greater land management techniques as well.
The bison, as big as they are and as much as they eat, will transform the prairie they live on. So as the tribe grew their herd, they partnered with neighbors who'd seen the changes and benefits firsthand. The team at the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve.
This is the last big example of tallgrass prairie in the world. What makes this place special is the native plant community. Having that plant diversity means you have more insect diversity, means you have different species of birds. It's an abundant, fertile landscape.
Bob Hamilton, with the Nature Conservancy, has been an ally of the Osage Nation for years now.
You're trying to restore a native ecosystem. You want to restore as many of the native species as possible. And bison are critical to that.
Since the Nature Conservancy's bison project began in 1993, their herd has grown to over 2,000, one of the largest conservation herds on the continent.
They've been called a keystone species just because of their tremendous effect to maintain the biological diversity of the prairie and how they diversified even further. So they are kind of the kings of the prairie.
Bison dung fertilizes the soil and supports hundreds of insect species, while bison fur provides prime nesting material for birds and mice.
See, just the birds and the mice, like the cattle don't have that fur. So just the fur not being on the prairie depletes so many other species.
The giants also shaped the land with brute force.
Buffaloes weigh about twice as much as cattle, so their impact and their depth of the impact on the land is essential for the long roots in the prairie grasslands. Because the deeper the holes they bring, like you'll see in a second, the deeper the water goes into the land.
Bison can weigh up to a ton. So when a bison wallows repeatedly, it pulverizes the vegetation, compressing the soil and leaving behind a crater.
These are the sites that in the springtime, in March and April, when typically we're getting a lot of water and the ground is saturated, these will explode with life, with salamanders and frogs, all sorts of stuff going through their life cycles. And so this is an interesting little microhabitat.
Bison once shaped life all across the prairie. And so did the people who lived with them.
The challenge as a land manager is how do you restore the way the prairie used to function? And that means grazing and fire.
Prairie doesn't remain prairie without fire. For untold generations, Osage and other tribal nations helped the grasslands thrive by setting fire to them. Today, they're reigniting that tradition.
This was a patch that we burned just, I think, 10 or 11 days ago. You can't get away from that the last few years.
Prescribed fire has been a real important component to the Osage people as we've managed our land over thousands of years. And we look forward to incorporating some of the techniques that the Nature Conservancy uses through their patch burning on the landscape as well.
Not only does a regime of fire maintain the grassland and keep invasive species at bay, the ashes also return vital nutrients to the soil. New vegetation emerges in just a few days after a burn, and it's irresistible to bison.
Burn it and they will come. That lush regrowth that comes up after a fire. If you're a grazing animal, that might as well be ice cream sandwiches out there.
Okay, I'll end it there. I will link all those 3 videos below so that you can watch them in full if you'd like to, but I encourage you to open your heart to the Keystone animals because I really believe that we embrace how wolves, beavers, buffalo restore our ecological systems and create climate resilience by storing carbon appropriately in the earth and the trees through the dams and all the benefits. That we embrace that nature is complex and that we're part of that complexity, then, it's a new day. So please check out my free ebook below. It will teach you how self-love creates heaven on earth. And at the end of this video, you'll see a link to my meditation and shamanic drumming video that you can use to help you open your heart to yourself. Because changing the world is an inside job. We have to change our souls to change our environment. All right, take care and I wish you the best. Please like and subscribe. Bye.